unequivocally oppose this war of choice, and everyone should.
I am a Democrat. I have been a huge Democrat. I am incredibly disappointed with my party. I do not see myself in them in this moment.
Okay, so it's that time. Let's now try to break down the Democrat Party's response to the whole Iran conflict, because as usual, these people are completely incoherent, right? Their actual political response does not make sense, because you have, of course, party leadership who has said for many decades that they support Israel and Iran is bad. And so now trying to find ways to craft a response that attacks Trump, they're arguing about things like congressional approval, even though their presidents also took many military strikes without congressional approval. They're trying to do this weird thing, even some of them saying that Trump is not being aggressive enough on Iran, but he's also being too aggressive. Like, understand, there's not really a whole lot they can say. And of course, you likewise have the anti-Israel progressive crowd who is essentially trying to just run cover for the Iranian regime, and likewise is making themselves look like fools. For example, we have Zohran Mamdani trying to express his sympathies for the Iranian diaspora and community in New York City, while of course they're out in the streets celebrating, and this guy has no clue what he's talking about. So it's all over the place. It makes no sense. We even have Iranian and Persian members of the Democrat Party calling out their own party, and to which I say I'm not exactly sure why you're in the Democrat Party to begin with. But that said, let's break all of this down for you here today. I want to show you what Democrat politicians are saying about it. Probably on our next video, we'll break down the protesters, because they're equally as ridiculous. But let's get into all of this, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all the latest news and coverage. And that said, just to show you again how incoherent and all over the place the Democrat Party's message is on this, let's take a look at the Chuck Schumer statement on U.S. military operations in Iran. So here's what he had to say. When I talked to Marco Rubio, I implored him to be straight with Congress and the American people about the objective of these strikes and what comes next, okay? Iran must never be allowed to attain a nuclear weapon, but the American people do not want another endless and costly war in the Middle East when there are so many problems at home. I think this guy actually supported many endless and costly wars in the Middle East. I see no evidence at the moment that this is going to be endless and costly, but of course Chuck Schumer is still taking the sort of mainstream DC political stance of they don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Okay, so then what's his criticism? He then says this administration's not provided Congress and the American people with critical details about the scope and the immediacy of the threat. Maybe that's because there's a war going on right now, right? Let's just leak all of our national security information. But this is the really dumb part. Okay, confronting Iran's malign regional activities, nuclear ambitions, and harsh oppression of the Iranian people, which Chuck Schumer's trying to acknowledge, demands American strength, resolve, regional coordination, and strategic clarity. Unfortunately, President Trump's fitful cycles of lashing out and risking wider conflict are not a viable strategy. Of course, this is coming from the political party of this scene right here, okay? So let's just remember, as Democrats say, oh, we need to be strong. He's saying, yes, we need to be tough on Iran, but Trump's strategy is not working. He's burning our regional partners. That's not true. Our regional partners, aka the Gulf states, like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, like UAE, are now joining us in the war because President Trump did some diplomacy, and by the way, Iran didn't do themselves any favors by bombing a bunch of civilians in those countries. So it's like, what is Chuck Schumer, of course, really even talking about? We need American strength? I'm pretty sure America is showing strength right now when we bomb the crap out of their country. Resolve, right? Resolve from the very Congress who's trying to call off the war as we speak. Regional coordination, strategic clarity. What are these people even talking about? But again, as I said, it's rather incoherent. So, you have that whole issue. They're trying to do a resolution on the War Powers Act. Same situation with Jeffries. Trump failed to seek congressional authorization prior to striking Iran. Instead, the president's decision to abandon diplomacy. Oh, that's what they're mad about now, diplomacy. Yeah, again, I say, does this look like diplomacy to you? If you remember this scene, this was actually what happened to Americans by the hands of Iranians, the Iranian military, right? Of course, while Barack Obama was president. And these people are lecturing us on how to deal with Iran, because clearly, the nuclear agreement, it just was working there so well. And of course, showing you again how these people are trying to invent something, but they're not really sure. Here we have, for example, Democrat Senator Mark Warner arguing that the problem is Trump took action on Iran now instead of January. So after Democrats spent 3 past presidential terms not taking action on Iran, now they're criticizing Trump for not attacking sooner, while the party is criticizing the attack, but also saying you should have attacked more quickly and more aggressively. Again, I say these people make no sense, but take a listen.
Ironically, Dana, if the president had chosen to take one of these actions back in early January, when the Iranian people were on the streets in the millions, you could make a case, because that might have nudged the regime into dramatic change. He couldn't make that choice because the aircraft carrier that would have assisted that operation was off the coast of Venezuela at that point, and our allies in the region, in Europe in particular, who would have been helping us make that choice in January, were very focused on the president's, crazy folly around Greenland. So the fact that he has chosen now, why now?
What? That's actually this guy's argument. The moment that protesting broke out in Iran, we should have just gone and struck them then. How dare Trump wait and coordinate things? To which I say, first of all, so that's the Democrat strategy. Let's just mass airstrike a bunch of protesters, right? Because I'm sure nothing would go wrong if the whole country's out in the streets and then we just start dropping a bunch of bombs. And, Democrats certainly wouldn't accuse us of killing a bunch of protesters or recklessly starting a military engagement without seeking diplomacy first, which brings me to my second point. Weren't the leadership of your party getting mad at Trump for abandoning diplomacy? But what was he doing for the last 2 months? Trying to work out a diplomatic solution to the problem. Are Democrats now arguing we should have just went and bombed immediately? Yeah? So they're actually the bigger war hawks than Trump now? Okay. So then what's your problem if you're the bigger war hawks with the whole thing in Iran even happening? No, but we're against the war, but we're for the war. It makes no sense. As I said, completely incoherent. And lastly, I know this is a shock to people, but, coordinating mass, large-scale military operations can't actually take time, right? We can't just use the Death Star to, just strike Iran like that overnight. You have to coordinate, you have to plan, you have to mobilize resources, you have to train soldiers for what they're about to do. I don't know. I guess that's how the military works. It's also been widely reported, too, we were not the only country who wasn't ready because of quote-unquote Venezuela, okay? Israel, as a matter of fact, too, asked Trump to have more time before we did something in order to replenish their own missile supply. So this is all to say, I don't know what they're talking about. He brings up Europe as if Europe is not helping anyway. They never planned to help. Historically, they were a minimal influence in many of our Middle East operations. I mean, they helped us out, especially Britain a little bit during the war on terror and stuff like that. But we don't need Europe. This doesn't involve Europe. I think you can see by the damage we're doing to Iran that this has nothing to do with Europe. We don't need the man back. What is this guy talking about, right? But as I said, that is them trying to balance the fact that, they have certain foreign policy interests in Washington, but they're trying to be anti-Trump, but they're trying to appease their pro-Iran base at the same time. And it just ends up with an answer there that makes absolutely no sense.
When it comes to negotiating with the terrorist government of Iran, Trump's all over the lot. One day he sounds tough, the next day he's backing off. And now, all of a sudden, we find out that Witkoff and Rubio are negotiating a secret side deal with Iran. What kind of bull is this? They're going to sound tough in public and then have a side deal that lets Iran get away with everything? That's outrageous. We need to make that side deal public. Any side deal should be before Congress and, most importantly, the American people. If Taco Trump is already folding, the American public should know about it. No side deals.
Anyone remember that, by the way? See what I'm saying? What happened to Taco Trump? There you had Chuck Schumer last year arguing that Trump isn't being tough enough on Iran and the diplomatic strategy's not working. Iran's really bad. You can't trust them. And then now he's attacking Trump for abandoning the diplomatic strategy and saying you're being too tough on Iran. Which one is it, right? And by the way, Chuck Schumer, is Iran, in your words, a terrorist government, or are they not? Because you can talk all you want about congressional authorization, but your Congress gave the president pretty unilateral authority to act against terrorists without congressional approval or authorization post 9/11. Right? So that's the thing. People say, oh, the president can't use the military at all without Congress. That's not true. He can use it in a different number of limited capacities. Airstrikes, pretty common, especially if they're against designated terrorist organizations. That is federal law, right? So how are you going to refer to the Iranians as a terrorist government while, you're criticizing Trump for not attacking? And then when Trump does, you're going to say what? Oh, it was a sovereign country. You can't bomb a sovereign country without asking Congress first. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. But that said, let's take a listen to what Zohran Mamdani had to say about this, because, you can fully bet he's heavily monitoring the situation, right? That's what the Democrats are doing. They're monitoring the situation. They want everyone to know that they're monitoring the situation. Anyways, here's what he had to say, though. Today's military strikes on Iran, carried out by the United States and Israel, mark a catastrophic escalation in an illegal war of aggression, bombing cities, killing civilians, opening a new theater of war. Last I checked, I think it's the other side here that's killing civilians. But anyways, Americans do not want this. They do not want another war in pursuit of regime change. They want relief from the affordability crisis. They want peace. He goes on to say, I'm focused on making sure that every New Yorker is safe, proactive steps, all that. But then he says this. Additionally, I want to speak directly to Iranian New Yorkers. You are part of the fabric of this city. You are our neighbors, small business owners, students, artists, etc. You will be safe here. So it seems to me Mamdani is under the perception that because there are immigrants in New York City from Iran, they're going to be mad that Iran's getting hit. I don't understand. There's a reason why people fled from Iran. Most of the Iranian diaspora around the world is leaving Iran for a specific reason, which is they're against the government. I guess Mamdani just doesn't understand this. He just assumes that, every immigrant group of brown people is all the same and they're all just, these weird anti-colonialist leftists, which is not true of Persian people in the West. I'm not exactly sure, but there you had him saying that. And of course, all of this sort of disjointed, but ultimately war against this rhetoric from the Democrat Party is coming, it turns out, as a reality check to some Persian members and activists within the Democrat Party. Because today, for example, on CNN, we have this, as I said, Persian activist who comes on and is basically shocked, thinking, oh, well, I thought we were the party of immigrants and all of this. But it turns out that when the Democrats completely misunderstand, I guess, in this case, a member of their voter base, it doesn't go all that well. So take a listen.
I think that it is imperative the Democratic Party wake up and get past their dislike of Donald Trump, the President Trump, and their feelings of international conflicts going on. This is about national security. This is about what is possible in the Middle East. This is about being a good neighbor, good partner to the Gulf states and what their aspirations are. This is about supporting the people of Venezuela. This is about dismembering our relationship with, or not dismembering, but resetting our relationship with China. Right now, 55% of the oil production that Iran produces goes to China despite sanctions. You want to support the people of Ukraine? You want to end that war? You have to. There is no getting around dismembering this Islamic Republic. It is non-negotiable. It is not a want to have. It is a have to have. And it's not just for the Iranian people. I think you have to trust the Iranian people. We know this government better than anyone else. When you dismember and decapitate this regime, you are going to see a change in the Middle East, in Venezuela, in China, in Ukraine. And I think, quite frankly, their ideology has it's caused a lot of problems for us worldwide. We need to take it seriously. And I think at this point, we have a tremendous opportunity. This will be like ending the Soviet Union, the Berlin Wall. This is a transformational moment for humankind, for security. And as an American, this is in our interest to complete it. So I am a Democrat. I have been a huge Democrat. I am incredibly disappointed with my party. I do not see myself in them in this moment.
Yeah, well, in that case, I don't really understand why you're a Democrat. It seems pretty incoherent to me. But nonetheless, this is the big picture problem with the Democrat coalition, is that when you make it your political project to build a voter base largely based off of immigrant votes, right? We're going to bring all of these brown people basically together and try to unite them off of the premise of anti-Westernism, anti-whiteism, anti-colonialism, etc., etc. But you quickly find out that a lot of different immigrant groups have different thoughts on certain issues, and this whole pan-brown racialism idea doesn't really fly. And that was exactly what just happened, right? With, say, Venezuela, where the Democrats obviously, spent a long time trying to appeal to all the Latino voters and all the migrants and all this, and then they're shocked, they're getting visibly angry out in the streets at the Venezuelan people who were celebrating over the capturing of Maduro, because guess what, politics aside, they're in the United States of America for a certain reason. And the Persian diaspora, which, by the way, is heavily living, like the largest group of them, right, is in where? Southern California, a blue Democrat state. I don't know the specific voting demographics, but you'd have to imagine, just given the politics there are definitely some of them, right, who are voting Democrat. And now, right, that Democrats want to come out against this, you have another immigrant group that they're actually kind of pissing off at the moment. And then, of course, because the Democrats are trying to basically say, we stand with the Ayatollah, we support Iran, all that, but they're trying to save face as well for the Persian voters, you just get this message that's completely incoherent, and it ends up sounding like Chuck Schumer, and it ends up sounding like Mark Warner, or even Zohran Mamdani, who thinks he's trying to express his condolences and his sympathy to the Persian people in New York City, and the Persian people feel the exact opposite. They're like, why are you offering condolences? This is a happy day, right? So just completely all over the place. But what else is new? Does this party really have an ideology at all besides just mass mobilized resentment, right? Just basically hating America, hating white people, hating Christians, and hating Donald Trump, and that's the ideology at the end of the day, right? They don't know what they believe. They don't really stand for anything. They just stand against everything. And I think that's another case here of what you're seeing, which, by the way, is why so often their ideas don't actually make any sense, right? Their arguments are not even logical. It's not coherent. But anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this situation in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.